Hey everybody, I'm Sean Robinson.
I'm Carson Grubaugh. Welcome to Living the Line.
And Carson, I sprung this on you. I have to tell you, I am envious of your one-man reviews because there's lots of stuff that I read that I know you don't have a copy of. But I can basically never get up the will to record a video by myself.
I
Uh,
don't know why. I've been like the by the way, so people know the intentions with the one man reviews is that we were both going to do them. And then Sean just has never done it. And so it looks like I've always been a little weirded out by that because I feel like I have taken over and just done my own thing under your name.
oh,
And that it has wound up looking like you're a guest who shows up on Saturdays on your own channel. But the intention was that we would both be doing these because we don't have time to do every video as a dual video, and B, neither of us have the money to go buy everything that the other one wants to read.
right.
um, so yes, what are you springing on me? Start recording videos, Sean.
So this is a very fun book called
Yeah.
Synth-kids uh,
Okay.
by Tomas Westberg. And Tomas is, I believe that this was, yeah, he's Swedish, a Swedish cartoonist, artist, and musician. And this is, I believe, a collection of some type of minis that he was doing. And this is actually in English. I believe that some of his books are in Swedish or originally published in Swedish, but he's done this himself and it is available directly from him. And as you can see, it's a really nicely put together book. It's got a great feel to it. It's got these nice like French flaps and a very interesting kind of story. So let's take a look.
Yeah.
Yeah, Synth-kids is a very interesting book. This is essentially a diary comic of growing up in Sweden in the early 80s. So this book starts taking place around 85 or so. And he's in middle school and it has a lot of the sort of first experiences that you might, expect, but filters all, as a teenager, but filters all of these experiences through the social lens of being part of a movement uh, of people who are interested in synth music. And so we have these little samples of music throughout the entire thing. The art is in a sort of a functional, simplified style. But one of the things that I thought was very interesting about visually is these actual usages of his photography
Mm,
throughout. So
yeah.
this is, he was really into photography and, he uses actual portraits of the people that he's talking about throughout the book, which actually most of the time gives it a really, really interesting kind of texture to it, especially when he starts going to shows and he becomes somebody who's making zines and things like that. So you get samples of his zines,
Hmm.
and there are aspects of it that I saw some of the tail end of some of these things, but things that people who didn't grow up in this era just would have no recollection of whatsoever, like bootleg lists. He's publishing this zine that he types up himself, and he has like a list of bootlegs that he'll tape for people. So it's like
Hmm.
taping circles for people who read the zine. So you're a fan of the music, and you can get live tapes from him, and he's making a copy of a copy of a copy for the people who read his zine.
That's fun. Like I've been going through 8 Ball because I got the complete 8 Ball from Dan Klaus.
Mhm.
And it's fun because they're doing facsimile editions of it. And so it has the original letter columns and stuff. And he ran a contest in issue 2 of 8 Ball for people to record on cassette tapes making prank calls, and then send the cassette tapes to him for a contest. And then in issue 3 he announced the winner of the prank call contest, And I thought, that's so early 90s, right?
Right. Sure
and
is.
and this is in the same way, like,
Yeah.
so mid 80s. And I really enjoyed that, like, time capsule aspect
Oh yeah.
of that. And so this looks very appealing to me on that same time capsule, like, accuracy.
Right. And just from a purely visual standpoint, I mean, the art is a little limited visually in the sense, I mean, it communicates what it needs to communicate, but this is the style that he's capable of drawing in, presumably. Um,
And I
and
like that you said functional, because I use
right,
that
it's
term a
functional.
lot too. Functional cartooning. There's nothing where you go like, oh my God, this guy's like my new favorite artist. It just,
Right.
but it all does its job like very well.
Exactly. Including communicating this little smirk of an expression. We've seen you in the hallways. You're hard to miss with that haircut. It's like um, he's getting essentially menaced by these two girls. You know what's weird about alfalfa sprouts? They look like sperms. They smell like sperms, and they taste exactly like sperm.
Oh,
Yeah.
I wouldn't know, but good to know. If I ever want to know what sperm tastes like, I'll eat alfalfa. I want, I, I don't think we have anyone in our audience that could confirm or deny that for us. But if there is somebody in our audience who could confirm or deny that sperm and alfalfa sprouts taste the same, I would like to know the accuracy of that statement.
Hit us up in the comments.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, but then, so it's just like this is just a whole other realm of visual texture, and the authenticity. You get like the side shave haircuts and things like that. So anyway, I won't trace the entire thing, but he essentially, as he gets to be a teenager, he gets associated with some of these bands, and this one particular band, he becomes the president of their fan club, and eventually, like, they ask him if he'll be their singer, and he declines, and he gets like socially engaged with these different bands, and through it you get these really interesting kind of peeks into early teenage life. Like, he's in this crowd here. They're great. Nah, they were better in 87. Hey, look at this. And this woman that he's with, like, flashes him, and he's like, come on, people are watching. Oh, you're so shy. You know, I think it's easy to forget that this era was just as impactful and just as wild as the 60s in terms of social upheaval. All of a
Yeah.
sudden, these kids had a totally different sort of set of circumstances and set of, you know, I mean, inhibitions. Everything was different, and
And
it's a very
it seems like that should be pretty resonant with like the youth today as well. I would assume, I would
yeah.
guess.
I think so, and maybe this is something where every generation thinks that there's something new and different, but I think this was a really interesting and pivotal time, and it's interesting to see it documented so well, and also to see the sort of texture that can be accomplished through the mixed media stuff. So,
Yeah.
well
It's
worth
interesting
a
too, because
read.
it's tied to music. And my sense from my students is that even though they have like this new worldview that's
Right.
pretty baffling oftentimes to people our age, it's not tied to music.
Right.
Like there's no musical genre or movement that it's tied to in the same way that, like, for the last 100 years it has been. Rock and roll, jazz, rap, hip hop, uh
Yeah,
all
each of
of
those.
those kind of heavy metal, the new metal that was like the thing in the 90s. You just don't get that anymore, I don't think.
They carried social phenomenon with them as part of the music, whereas things are so fragmented now. It seems like the social phenomenon are separated from the music.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, very
that's,
much.
but at least that's my perspective as an old man outsider. So,
Well, yeah,
uh,
but as someone who's like in the room with the kids all the time, asking them about this stuff, I don't get any sense that there's any common music driving any of this stuff. They're totally divorced. The majority of what they listen to, I've talked to them about this. They listen to this like super monotonous lo-fi hip hop stuff that's, or like shit that like Yanni would make, like bird noises and like waterfall, and like they're all just so stressed out that the music they listen to is like meditation music.
Very interesting.
But that's not like a movement that comes with a style or anything, you know.
Right. Uh, I would recommend people who are interested in, especially like Depeche Mode and groups like that,
Yeah.
definitely check out Synth-kids. And I sometime I might link to an article too that I wrote a while back about why Depeche Mode are an underrated band. It's almost as if you had the Beatles came and went 20 years later, and they never got any press. It's like
Yeah.
it's like, what if the Beatles existed in a different culture 20 years later, but they never actually had all of their interviews were talking about their hair, like continually. I know the Beatles had that at the beginning, right? But then they
Yeah.
got taken seriously, and they sort of took over, right? But Depeche Mode were like one of the biggest bands in the world and never got that same kind of respect. And part of it, I think, is just confusion as to what it is that they represented. And I think part of it too is just there's a certain backlash for art that has utility, and the fact that you can dance to it
Yeah.
degraded it. That people didn't see it as real art because you could dance to it. In the same sense that someone doesn't see something as real art if it's a basket and you can put your fruit in it. You know what I mean?
Do you think it was partly too just because like it was like the whole aesthetic was just a little darker, so it was like a harder mainstream sell or something?
Yeah, I mean it's possible, but they actually had mainstream penetration. It just wasn't highly regarded. Uh,
Yeah.
it's like it just never quite got any type of cachet. It didn't
But
have.
I wonder if some of that is because it was easy for like a critical audience to look at like the visuals that went with it. Whereas like when the Beatles first came out, they were kind of like in suits and stuff. That was
Right.
like mom and dad didn't like the music, but like they look like respectable young men. These guys look like fucking freaks with like chopped up
Right.
hair, and they're all got, all dark and depressed. Like it
No,
just
that's a
seems
good
like a
point.
harder sell to me. It's like convincing parents that Marilyn Manson is like,
Right.
you know,
Yeah, that's a
I
good
don't
point.
know.
And
Just a
yeah,
guess.
that's an excellent observation, that the visual aspect of it, which it's really clear in the book that that's how his friends communicate with each other. They can just identify each other, and similarly, they go out to clubs and stuff, and they're like menaced by the rockers, like
Yeah.
it's like the mods and the rockers, like in the early '60s or something. Like the groups are almost like gangs, or different stripes of weasel who have groomed themselves, to separate each other.
I
From
wonder if that was part of it too, is that the pop culture had fractured a little bit more by the 80s. There were more subgenres, so there was less of like when the Beatles came, it was like if you're a kid, you like the Beatles.
Right.
They spoke to the entire, and then throughout, like when they really became more politically active, I feel like they represented the entire fucking generation.
Right.
In a certain way, whereas like in the 80s you could bifurcate off into like the synth kids and the hip hop kids and the heavy metal kids and
Right.
the butt rock, glam rock kids.
Right.
So I think that's where some of that like lesser cultural impact comes from, in the same way that now like music is even less important because people are like, oh yeah, I'm into like dark castle synth wave ambient, and it's like, what the fuck? Like, can't you just be into synth? No, only castle synth. It's like, okay. I wonder if that was part of it too.
Yeah, no, you're probably right. This is tracing a trajectory of increasingly splintered popular culture. But yeah,
chopping things apart further and further. Yeah.
Anyway, well worth checking out. I'm not sure what the import fee is looking like right now, or if he's going to get some U.S. distribution, but it's an excellent book, and really enjoyed it, and really complemented well the Depeche Mode biography I was reading recently. So
where did you grab it from? Where did you encounter this?
I was communicating with the author.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, excellent book.
Well, I look forward to trying to find myself a copy of that. Thank you, Sean, for sharing your one-man review with me. But you should definitely, everyone, load the comments with how much you would like to see Sean also do one-man reviews. And we'll see what happens.
I'm trying. And while you're at it, go out there and pick up Centralia and take a look at The Exile. We got some very excellent books on the horizon, and I believe both of those books should be available to pre-order nowish or soonish.
Awesome.
livingthewinebooks.com.
Thank you so much, everybody. Take it
you.
easy.
Bye.
You want to see all these books? Smash that subscribe button and the like button and the bell, and then you get them.